Hey warriors, if you have these traits, you're not just smart, you're dangerous in the best way. Now listen, most people spend their whole life trying to look intelligent. They collect facts, they memorize quotes, they talk fast, they talk loud, they throw opinions like confetti and call it confidence. But Machiavelli didn't measure intelligence that way. He measured it by control. Control over yourself when you're provoked. Control over situations when everyone else is confused. Control over outcomes when the room is emotional, impulsive, and blind. Because real intelligence isn't about what you know. It's about what you can do with what you know, without begging for attention, without exposing your next move, and without losing your position. Most people confuse intelligence with knowledge. Machiavelli measured it by control, over yourself, over situations, and over outcomes. And here's the brutal truth. The world doesn't reward the smartest person on paper. The world rewards the person who understands people, reads power, and moves with timing. The world rewards the person who can stay calm while others panic, who can see patterns while others chase drama, who can hold their tongue while others sell their dignity for a moment of being heard. These aren't school traits. They're real-world traits that let you see patterns, read people, and move strategically while everyone else reacts. So if you've ever felt like you're different, like your mind doesn't work like most people, like you notice things others ignore, like you can feel the shift in a room before anyone says a word, this video is for you. Because the smartest person in the room rarely announces it. They don't need to. They let others underestimate them. They let others reveal themselves. They let others make noise, while they quietly collect the advantage. As we go through the 7 traits, keep score, because the quietest person often has the sharpest mind. And don't treat this like entertainment. Treat this like a mirror, because if you recognize yourself in these traits, it means you're not built for the average path. You're built for strategy. You're built to win without begging. You're built to move like someone who understands the game. Here are the 7 traits that separate the smartest from the loudest. Before we go deeper, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I move with control. Let's start with the trait that scares loud people the most, strategic silence. Because silence isn't emptiness, silence is positioning. Most people talk to prove they belong. They fill every pause with jokes, opinions, stories, explanations. Not because they have something valuable to say, but because they fear what happens when they stop talking. They fear losing attention. They fear being judged. They fear being unseen. But if you have this trait, you don't fear the pause. You understand something most people never learn. Attention is currency. And you don't spend it like a broke man at a casino. You spend it like an investor, carefully, on purpose, only when the return is worth it. That's what strategic silence really is. It's not being shy. It's not being introverted. It's not being soft. It's knowing that every word you speak gives away 3 things: what you want, what you fear, what you're about to do next. So when the moment isn't right, you don't leak information. You don't expose emotion. You don't reveal your plan just to feel included. You wait. And while you wait, something powerful happens. Other people start talking for you. They explain themselves. They overshare. They justify. They defend. They try to impress. They try to win you over. They try to pull you into their frame. And if you're smart, you don't interrupt that process. Because people always reveal who they are when they feel safe enough to speak without resistance. They reveal their ego when they aren't challenged. They reveal their intentions when you don't argue back. They reveal their weakness when they feel like they're in control. Silence gives them that illusion, so you let them have it. You let them talk long enough to show their priorities. You let them speak long enough to expose their insecurity. You let them go long enough to show the gap between what they claim and what they actually value. This is how you gain advantage without aggression. Strategic silence also changes your presence. When you don't rush to respond, people start watching you. They start measuring you. They start wondering what you're thinking. You become harder to read, and that makes you harder to manipulate. Think about it. The person who talks non-stop is easy to predict. But the person who listens first, that person feels heavier. That person feels sharper. That person feels like they're seeing more than they're saying. And that's exactly what's happening, because you're not using conversations as a stage. You're using them as a scan. You're listening for the real message underneath the words. You're noticing who tries to dominate, who tries to please, who tries to provoke, and who tries to gain status. You're picking up on what they emphasize, what they avoid, and what they repeat when they think it's working. Then, only then, you speak. And when you finally do, your words land differently, because you don't speak in paragraphs. You speak in decisions. You ask one clean question that forces clarity. You drop one sentence that resets the room. You make one calm statement that changes the direction. That's why strategic silence is a sign of intelligence. It turns your voice into a weapon, not a habit. And here's the part most people don't expect. This trait isn't just social, it's personal. Strategic silence means you can hold yourself back from impulse. It means you don't send the angry text. You don't snap in the moment. You don't announce your moves early. You don't argue with someone who's trying to drag you down to their level. You let time do the work. You let patience build pressure. You let people show you exactly where they stand. Then you move. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I speak with purpose. Number 2, reading real motives. This is where most people get played, because they listen to sentences instead of reading purpose. The average person treats conversation like a literal transaction. You said this, so you must mean this. They assume everyone is operating with clean intentions, clear logic, and honest delivery. That sounds nice. It's also how people get used, cornered, and manipulated without even noticing. If you have this trait, you don't fall for the surface. You pay attention to what drives the words, because motives don't live inside speeches. Motives live inside behavior, especially behavior under pressure. Anyone can sound reasonable when everything is calm. Anyone can look loyal when there's nothing to lose. Anyone can appear supportive when it costs them nothing. But when there's a choice between their image and their interest, that's when the real person shows up. So you don't just ask, what did they say? You ask, what are they trying to get? And you don't need paranoia to do this. You just need awareness. You notice who only shows up when they need something. You notice who becomes friendly right before they make a request. You notice who praises you in public but undermines you in private. You notice who always has an excuse but never has accountability. You notice who changes their story depending on the audience. That's not negativity. That's intelligence. Because once you can read motive, you stop making emotional decisions based on someone's performance. You stop being pulled by guilt, flattery, urgency, or pressure. You stop reacting to their tone and start analyzing their aim. And here's the scary part. Most people are not even lying on purpose. They're lying to themselves first. They don't say, I want control. They say, I'm just trying to help. They don't say, I'm jealous. They say, I'm just being honest. They don't say, I want attention. They say, no one appreciates me. But your mind doesn't get hypnotized by the packaging. You look past the story and focus on the payoff. What do they gain if you believe them? What do they lose if you say no? What happens if you don't respond the way they expect? That's why this trait feels almost like a sixth sense. It's not magic, it's pattern recognition in human nature. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. Everyone can see and few can feel." That line matters here because it exposes a hard reality. People often judge based on what looks convincing, not what's true. They get seduced by confidence, style, titles, charm, and volume. They mistake appearance for reliability. They confuse boldness with honesty. You don't. You understand that the smoothest talker in the room may be the most dangerous one, because they know how to sell a version of themselves that gets them what they want.